Hi, my name is Connor Smallwood, and my presentation is on how the NHL markets to new customers. So, what are the NHL's marketing objectives? The first one would be to reach more potential customers and grow their customer base. And the second one, tying into that, is to earn profit from ticket sales, food sales, and eventually merchandise sales if that particular target market has fans in it. Alright, so the first example I'm going to be going through is social media apps. Like most leagues, the NHL has all the big social media apps on all the platforms, such as Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So going in depth more, Facebook allows them to reach an older target market who may be in their 40s or 50s, who don't really have Instagram or Twitter or any of the things that a lot of younger generation people, such as myself, would have. So that allows them to reach a potentially older population than you could on, say, Instagram and Twitter below here, where that would be reaching more younger people like me. They mostly contain the same type of content across all platforms, but they do differ in small ways, I guess. And this also ties back to their main two objectives, because through advertising revenue from these accounts, they're able to make profit. So here I have a table of some examples on each of the platforms I'll be going over: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And I have some examples, the number of followers they have, and a link of an example from each one if you're inclined to see. So for Instagram and Facebook, the first one I have is retro game highlights. These are basically where they'll take old playoff games or interesting games from the 1990s per se, and they'll scrunch it up with all the highlights into 10 or 15 minute video, so you don't have to stay there for 3 hours and watch the whole game. And this is great for people on Instagram, because most people who use Instagram weren't even old enough probably when these games happened. So if you see that, you're going by, and it's very interesting to see a game from the 1990s, what it was like. So that's a good draw for people my age. And then for Facebook, it's the opposite. People who use Facebook, the target market they're looking for on here for new customers is older, so they will probably remember these games if they have ever had any interest in hockey, or maybe they'd like to see some replays of some hockey highlights from the 1990s. So you can have that. Once I noticed that they all seem to post are player interviews. So this is where they'll get basically popular players such as Sidney Crosby or Alex Ovechkin, and they'll get them on a video call or on video, and they'll sit down and get them to do games or quizzes and fun activities like that. So it feels like we're sort of interacting with the fan base. All of them post highlight reels of the highlights from the past week's games or something like that. I noticed on Instagram and Twitter they do important league statistics, like who's the scoring leader, who's the assists leader, who has the most fights, and they'll post an updated list, every 2 weeks or so, something like that. And something they can't do on other platforms, but they can on Twitter, is retweet other tweets from affiliated NHL Twitter accounts, such as my example is the Phoenix Coyotes, a team in Arizona. And the NHL doesn't actually post them on their account, but they retweet it from this account. So people who are following the NHL or see the NHL on Twitter can see a whole plethora of team activities and stuff the other teams are doing individually, not as a whole league. So it's great for drawing people in for a specific niche market. And as you can see, they all have a lot of followers. Instagram has 4.1 million, Facebook has 4.65, and Twitter has 6.3 million followers. Now with follower numbers like this, I know on Instagram there's a For You feed or a Browse feed. That'll just be a whole bunch of random stuff. And accounts like this, generally with big followers, tend to get mixed up into there. So it's great for people who are just scrolling through their their phone and they might see one of these things that interests them, and it'll pop up for them. So that's the social media aspect. Another great method is international NHL games. These are just any NHL games that take place outside of North America. This method is great because it gives people who don't live inside North America a taste for what the hockey experience is really like without having the hassle of coming all the way to North America and crossing the sea. And it's also a great way to penetrate new markets. Recently they've been doing games in China. And hockey is not a very large sport in China, but there are 1.3 billion potential viewers there whom each one of them could possibly be interested in hockey. So by taking these international games into lesser known markets, they're able to gain new fans. And I have a few examples here. These are all the international games played by NHL teams since 2000. And you can see in the year 2000 they went to Japan. I mean, half the people in Japan in the year 2000 probably had never heard of hockey, but now they have an international men's ice hockey team. While they may not be good, like countries who have played hockey for longer, it means they're growing, and you can see that. And they'll play anywhere from 2 to 11 games in one of these trips that the teams take. Most of the locations are in hockey-friendly regions like Europe, in countries such as Finland, Sweden, or Germany. And the third method I will be going over is NHL expansion teams. There were only 6 NHL franchises in 1967, and they're up to 31 now. So they're all across the country, which is great. And this basically means that each new team they have more tickets to sell, more merchandise to sell, more food to sell, which equals more profit, all relating back to their main 2 objectives. And yeah, it's great. My example I'll be using is the Vegas Golden Knights. They were introduced in the 2017 season. There was a lot of doubts surrounding whether this team would be feasible in a tourist city like Las Vegas. And since the last NHL expansion teams were introduced in the year 2000, a 17-year gap, which would have been the second largest gap in between expansion. And it's also much more complicated to do something like that now. And it is actually the first professional sports team based out of Las Vegas. So people who want to go to Las Vegas are on a trip and they want to see a sports game or something, usually you'd have to go to a boxing match or something. But now they have hockey games, and 82 games a year, 41 of which will be played in Las Vegas. So any tourists who are coming through town won't have to choose between different sports, and the NHL basically controls the sports market there in a way because they decided to expand to this Vegas town. And 2 years after expansion, Vegas is now the 13th most profitable team out of 31 teams. So it proves that these expansion teams really do help market to new areas. And in conclusion, the NHL uses various means of marketing tactics, just as every other big corporation does. But I think the NHL does a much better job than a lot of other platforms. They use a lot of various techniques, whether it's the player interviews or their willingness to go play hockey games in China just to get more fans. It really tells the fans that they care about their fans. The NHL does. And I think that's what sets them apart from a lot of other companies and corporations. These guys really know how to show love to their fans and keep their fans entertained all the time, whether it's through social media or through exhibition games or anything played international, or who knows, maybe if you live in a big enough city you'll get an NHL team soon, who knows. So I think they do a great job. And that's it. Thank you for my presentation.